My sister seated me by the kitchen like I was staff even after I paid $42,000 for her dream day, so I canceled everything and let karma decide her fate. Hi, I'm Shanda at my sister's wedding. She sat me by the kitchen. No place card, no thank you. Just the smell of used plates and people talking around me like I wasn't there. I smiled. I stayed quiet. And then I canceled everything. You ever realized too late that the people you've supported the most were just using your silence? I funded her dream day. I wrote the check. I planned the pieces. And they erased me like I was the help. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part, I wasn't even supposed to be there that early. But I'd learned the hard way that if I didn't double-check things myself, they'd go sideways. The email about bridesmaid dress codes had come a week ago. Pastels only, but it wasn't sent to me directly. I had to ask Tanya to forward it. She hesitated before saying, "Oh, you didn't get it? That's strange." It wasn't. I scrolled through the thread. My name wasn't on the list. Just like that, I realized something. This wasn't the first time I'd been edited out, but it stung in a different way now. Maybe because this time it was my own sister getting married, and I'd helped her cover the loan that made this whole spectacle possible. The Charleston heat had started to settle when I pulled up to the venue. A fancy, overly restored barn, with beams, faux rustic chandeliers, and enough florals to choke a greenhouse. I'd paid the balance for the floral upgrade last Thursday. I'd chosen a burgundy chiffon dress, not pastel. I didn't own anything in that shade. Didn't feel like going out to buy something just to blend into a color scheme I hadn't even been looped into. The young woman at the front looked me over and asked, "Are you with the kitchen staff?" My mouth didn't move. I just blinked. She held out a laminated vendor access card and gestured toward a side door. I didn't argue. What was I supposed to say? "No, sweetie. I'm the sister of the bride. The invisible one." I entered through the back hallway. A server brushing past offered me a half-hearted smile, then looked away. The floor smelled like garlic and sweat. I followed the floral arch signs, hand-lettered with phrases like "this way to forever," until I found someone who directed me to my seat, or what they called a seat. It was shoved next to a clunky cart stacked with used silver trays. A folding chair with no cushion, no name card, just a folded paper napkin someone had probably used to wipe lipstick off a glass. The swinging kitchen door squeaked on its hinges, smacking the wall every 30 seconds like a metronome of humiliation. I sat down slowly. The chair groaned beneath me. Through the thin opening between the door and the frame, I could see the reception room glowing. Gold chargers, string lights, a custom neon sign that read, "The future is ours." My future apparently was in this corner with the waitstaff. Tanya passed by, eyes darting toward me, then quickly away. She didn't stop. I didn't blame her. It's easier to pretend you didn't see someone than to explain why you didn't help them. No one came to say hi. No one asked if I needed water. Servers stepped around me like I was part of the equipment. I sat there inhaling steam from the kitchen, the smell of hot marinara thick in the air. It clung to my skin, mixed with the soft perfume I'd put on that morning, hoping to feel, I don't know, like I belonged. But I didn't. I looked down at my dress, soft burgundy, pleated by hand. I'd steamed it twice that morning, got my hair done at 7 a.m. It was curled just enough to frame my face without looking too done. I wanted to be respectful, presentable. I still don't know why. I guess I still believed somewhere inside that my presence mattered. The thing is, I had paid for this. Not just metaphorically, literally. The band, the upgraded dessert table, the custom candles. When Darlene called me 6 months ago crying about how they'd maxed out their budget, I didn't hesitate. "We'll figure it out," I told her. "I've got it." And I did. What I didn't have was a seat. I shifted in my chair. It wobbled. My purse, a leather one Darlene gave me 3 birthdays ago, rested beside my foot on the sticky floor. A waiter's tray passed inches from my shoulder. Someone dropped a fork and didn't bother to pick it up. That's when I realized something. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't someone forgetting to place my name card or update the seating chart. This was deliberate. I could feel it in the way no one made eye contact. The way the playlist changed tempo the moment the mother of the groom was introduced. Leona in a navy sheath dress with pearls. She gave a speech toasted to our beloved family. People clapped. She didn't mention me. Why would she? A month ago, I'd overheard her say, "Shanda's sweet, but she doesn't understand presentation. Not like us." I had paid for that presentation, and now I was the stain they didn't want in the photo. A server passed by again and said, "You okay back here, ma'am?" I nodded. "I'm fine." He smiled like he didn't believe me, then walked off. I watched the golden light pulse from the reception room, the laughter, the champagne flutes raised, the curated joy. And me? I was the ghost behind the kitchen door. I reached into my purse and grabbed a tissue, dabbed the corner of my eye. Not because I was crying, but because the heat was making my eyeliner sting. Then I sat straighter. Let the moment soak. Let the air fill with meaning. And I whispered, "Noted." The clinking of glasses from the reception room faded as the kitchen door swung shut behind another waiter. I sat still, lips pressed together, letting the heat settle into my bones. I'd been here before, just not physically. Emotionally, I'd known this corner. This kind of eraser didn't come all at once. It was small, precise, like a slow deletion. You start with a name off an email, and before long, you're a ghost in your own story. The day before during the rehearsal dinner, I'd worn navy. Classic, simple. I showed up early again because someone had to make sure the wine delivery was signed for. That someone had always been me. I didn't do it for thanks anymore. I did it because it would fall apart if I didn't. Darlene smiled when she saw me. One of those tight curated expressions meant to look grateful, but rehearsed. "You're amazing, Sean." Seriously. She gave me a half hug before turning to greet Leona, who arrived 15 minutes late and somehow still took center stage. I'd written a short speech for the rehearsal dinner. It wasn't long, just a few words about growing up with Darlene, how she used to make sock puppets and pretend we were co-hosting a talk show. How she'd sing off-key in the car but never stopped performing. I kept it light, sentimental, sure, but not sappy. When I told her about it 3 weeks ago, she tilted her head and said, "Maybe let's keep everything tight and aesthetic. You know, we've got a pretty packed timeline." I should have known right then. The very next day, an updated itinerary went out, this time from Leona's personal assistant. No mention of my speech, no slot for it, not even a line that said TBD. I didn't push, didn't ask. That silence was sharp enough. Royce, her fiancé, didn't even blink when I brought it up. Just nodded and said, "It's going to be a beautiful night. Let's not overcomplicate it." Tanya looked like she wanted to say something, but sipped her mimosa instead. I told myself it wasn't a big deal, that they were probably just trying to streamline the evening. But that was the second cut. The first might have been when Norma, one of the venue staff, leaned in during setup and whispered, "Leona's finalizing the seating again. She's going for that Napa Valley vibe. You know how she is." And then she rolled her eyes, but it was playful, not malicious. As if I was in on the joke. I wasn't laughing. I used to be part of those conversations. I used to approve layouts, not be sidelined by them. So, I logged into the wedding planning spreadsheet that night just to double-check a few details. Access denied. I tried again. No dice. The document I'd built from scratch that I updated with every vendor contract, every floral adjustment, every invoice and deposit was now marked Leona Events Private Access. She'd literally taken my work and rebranded it. My contact list, the one I used to manage band schedules, gluten-free orders, even the damn valet instructions, gone. When I texted about it, Darlene replied, "Oh, sorry. I thought Leona CC'd you. She's streamlining now. Less cooks in the kitchen, huh?" With a winking emoji. I didn't answer. That night, I checked the email thread about the rehearsal dinner location. I had placed the deposit, booked the room, selected the wine pairings, but somehow the final confirmation didn't include me, just Leona and her assistant. And my name wasn't listed on the staff contact sheet either. They'd made new lanyards. Mine wasn't among them. It wasn't oversight anymore. It was extraction. At the dinner, I was seated at the edge of the room near a window with no view. The air conditioner blew directly on my shoulder. I kept a cardigan folded over my lap, unsure if I wanted warmth or just something to fidget with. Leona took the microphone at dessert. She stood at the center of the room, her voice smooth and crisp like she was announcing an Oscar winner. This wedding would not have been possible without the support of so many. Truly, we are blessed. She thanked the venue, the photographer, the calligrapher, the DJ. Then she said, and of course to the family, Darlene's wonderful friends and our circle who made this a dream. She lifted her glass. People clinked. Darlene beamed. I stared down at my untouched wine. No one mentioned the woman who paid for the 5-tier cake or the woman who negotiated the dance floor upgrade or the woman who filled in all the budget gaps while her sister called the shots and someone else cashed the credit. I wasn't forgotten. I'd been deleted, and I finally believed it. They'd cut me out piece by piece, like trimming a photo until I no longer fit the frame. And yet, I was still standing there, quiet, polite, swallowing the silence they handed me like it was dessert. But something shifted when Leona said, "This dream come true." Because it wasn't my dream, and it wasn't theirs either. Not entirely. It was mine. Funded by my sacrifices, executed by my effort, and now paraded without my presence. I looked around the room one last time, smiles everywhere, curated, polished. I thought, you erased me, so don't flinch when I start disappearing. The next day rolled in with a sky the color of dishwater and the kind of humidity that made even silk feel heavy. I sat alone in the hotel room for a few minutes longer than I should have. I dressed, did my makeup, fixed the hem on my dress again. Burgundy, same as yesterday. The one shade that didn't fit their curated pastel palette. I wore it again on purpose. I checked my phone. One new message from Tanya. "Hey, so sorry, Sean. They said only the bridal team can be backstage. Maybe just wait outside." Bridal team, not family, not sister, just team, like a cast. And I was no longer on the call sheet. I headed to the venue early again, hoping I'd at least get a moment with Darlene before the ceremony started. She and I hadn't talked since that odd smile she gave me at the rehearsal. Not that she reached out, not even a thanks again for making all this happen. When I got to the prep room, the door was shut. There was no knock, no greeting, just the muffled sounds of curling irons hissing, someone laughing, and the occasional flash from a camera through the frosted glass. I lingered a moment too long, waiting for someone to notice I was there. No one did. Inside, Leona was mid-touch-up. Her voice rang out, instructing someone about floral placements near the gift table like she was the event director. I turned away without knocking. I'd paid for the cake, the band, and even the monogrammed napkins, but I wasn't welcome inside the room. I should have left then. I didn't. Instead, I wandered the hallway aimlessly for a bit, heels clicking too loudly on the concrete. I passed a staffer who glanced up from his clipboard and motioned toward a different hallway. "You're here for the ceremony, right?" I nodded. He didn't wait for confirmation. "We're tight on space, so they've asked some guests to sit along the side entrance for overflow." Overflow. He led me down a dim side corridor, turned a corner, and pointed at a lone chair next to a stack of used trays. No decorations, no signage, just a paper napkin tossed across the seat like it had been left behind by accident. He patted his clipboard. "Just wait here until they start calling the tables. It's pretty packed in there right now." Then he disappeared. The door to the reception room swung open again. Warm yellow light spilled out along with the faint echo of a violin warming up. I caught the opening notes of the first dance. I sat down. The chair was wobbly. The leg scraped against the uneven floor, making an awkward screeching noise when I shifted. The smell of garlic and frying oil clung to everything, even my hair. The back of my neck felt damp, not just from heat, but from something else I didn't want to name. Humiliation. Regret. I reached down and adjusted the strap on my shoe. I could hear the first announcements being made, something about the couple's entrance, something about love being eternal. A wheel on the tray cart behind me let out a long, slow squeal as someone pushed it down the hall. Every sound around me was sharp and out of place, and then I heard someone behind me. "Ma'am, are you one of the coordinators? You're with catering, right?" It was a young server, couldn't have been more than 19. Her voice was kind, curious. I turned slowly, trying not to show the sting in my chest. "No," I said softly, but the girl already looked embarrassed. "Sorry, it's just you're in the vendor area, and I never mind." She moved on. I sat there in my $300 dress with makeup I'd paid someone 2 hours' wages to apply with no place card, no seat at the table, no mention in the program. The program. I pulled it out from my clutch. Cream cardstock, elegant script, custom wax seal on the back. I'd paid extra for that seal. Darlene had said it gave the whole thing a modern heirloom feel. I opened it slowly, scanning the page. Her father walked her down the aisle. Her new mother-in-law gave the welcome speech. There was a paragraph thanking the special friends and supporters who made the dream possible. No mention of me. I wasn't family. I wasn't friend. I wasn't anything at all. I looked through the door again. The lights were lower now, the photographer circling the dance floor as Darlene and Royce moved in sync. She laughed, her hand grazing his cheek. And then she saw me. Our eyes locked. She smiled, calm, collected. Not the smile of someone who forgot to include me. The smile of someone who planned not to. She turned away before I could react. I looked down at the program in my lap again. My hands were steady now, but not cold, just clear. I folded the paper in half slowly, neatly. Then I folded it again, set it down beside my purse, and whispered to no one, so this is where I stopped clapping. The clapping roared just beyond the kitchen door. I could hear the metal mic screech slightly. Then Royce's voice filled the room like he was emceeing a pageant. He was thanking everyone, his parents, Darlene's parents, Leona, the organizing rock who made this day look and feel like magic, he said. People hooped, cheered. I heard Tanya laugh faintly in the background. Then came Darlene's dad. His voice was warm, folksy. When my little girl said she wanted a fairy tale, we never imagined something this beautiful. A pause. And thanks to the many hands that made this day happen. Many hands. I wasn't one of them. I stayed still in my chair, fingers lightly touching the edge of the program I'd folded earlier. It rested beside me like a discarded napkin, neat, tucked, and ignored. Not one name, not one nod, and certainly not mine. I was the one who made the down payment on the venue. I paid for the lighting. I negotiated with the band twice after they tried to increase their rates last minute. I Venmo'd the florist a $3,000 deposit 3 months ago, but tonight I was sitting behind a tray of used forks and a bucket of kitchen towels. I turned on my phone. The glow lit up my lap. I pulled open my inbox and typed in receipt. The search returned dozens of hits. I scrolled through the digital proof of my presence. Band $5,200. Venue $12,000. Florals $3,400. Catering deposit $9,800. Linens, portable heaters, neon signage, custom signature cocktails. I scrolled and scrolled. Over $42,000 and not one toast in my direction. I remembered Darlene's voice in my head, syrupy and rehearsed. You'll cover this last upgrade, right? It'll mean the world. I said yes like I always did. I thought saying yes was my way of loving her. Turns out it was just my way of disappearing. My phone buzzed again. Darlene, please don't make this about you. This is our day and your mood is visible. Then another. Leona, you're being petty. If you ruin this, that's on you. The gall, the arrogance. I stared at the screen. The text sat there, blue bubbles against white space like bruises waiting to spread. I didn't text back, didn't even blink. Instead, I opened the folder in my phone labeled Wedding Docs. There was a subfolder for Sunday brunch. Another for bar service final invoice pending. I stared at the brunch invoice for a moment longer than necessary. $4,600 still unpaid. I could cancel it with a single call. The florist delivery for the next morning still refundable. My name wasn't mentioned, but my money, my effort, they were the invisible foundation holding this wedding up like scaffolding. Quiet, sturdy, unseen, but vital. I looked up. Someone wheeled by with another tray of champagne glasses. The server didn't see me. I could have disappeared right then and no one would have noticed. Not really. And then I remembered something else. 3 weeks ago, I caught Royce at the coffee shop near my house reviewing layout notes with Leona. Not Darlene, not me. When I walked up, he flinched. "Oh, hey, Sean. We were just finalizing details Darlene's too busy for." And Leona didn't look up. She just said, "Some people contribute better from the sidelines." That's when it started. The shift, that invisible shove from the center of the room to the edge of the frame. A repositioning, a subtle exile. Now I looked around the hallway. Concrete floor, yellowing paint, the sound of silverware clinking just a wall away. And suddenly the silence wasn't humiliating anymore. It was revealing. This wasn't my wedding, but it had been my investment. And now they wanted my silence, too. I closed my email, switched over to the banking app, and hovered over the brunch payment. The words "pending confirmation" blinked slowly, rhythmically, like a countdown. They erased me so easily. Maybe it was time I erased something of my own. A slow breath. I put the phone down on my lap. Didn't text back. Didn't cry. Didn't flinch. I just stared at that pending brunch invoice and thought, I paid to be erased. Let's see how they react when I vanish myself. Back in my hotel room, the world felt padded, soft, like everything was muffled by a layer of invisible cotton. I hadn't taken off my dress. Burgundy chiffon clung to my legs as I sat on the edge of the bed, shoes still on, makeup still perfect. The silence in the room wasn't comforting. It was surgical. I reached into my bag, pulled out my laptop, and powered it up. The glow of the screen was the only light in the room, casting blue shadows across the comforter. I opened the master wedding budget spreadsheet. Line by line, I went through it. I'd organized everything. Deposits, final payments, backup vendors, contingency fees. I knew every entry because I wrote them, but now there were new additions. A second tasting session at a vineyard in Asheville, a luxury rehearsal upgrade at the hotel bar. I hadn't approved those. I scrolled to the far right column where the payment sources were logged. My name, my card. I clicked open my Venmo. One message floated to the top from Darlene to the wedding planner. His sister's covering everything. Go big. I stared at it, fingers hovering over the keyboard. Not my sister. Not even Shanda. Just his sister. Like I was a tool, a placeholder, a credit line with legs. This wasn't negligence. This was theft wrapped in glitter. The pain didn't land all at once. It came in dull waves like a slow storm building offshore. I shut the laptop, set it on the side table. I didn't trust my hands to stay steady. I stood up, took 3 slow steps to the drawer of the nightstand, and opened it. There it was, a red folder. I'd brought it from home weeks ago, meaning to finally read what was inside. My father's letter. He'd written it before he passed, but I'd never opened it. I think part of me was afraid. Afraid he'd explain the kind of man he really was. Or maybe afraid I wouldn't like the truth. Tonight, I wanted to know. My finger slid under the flap. The paper inside had yellowed slightly. I sat back down and unfolded it. The handwriting was unmistakably his. Large, sharp, deliberate. Shanda, there's something I need to tell you before I go. Darlene isn't biologically yours. Her mother left her with me when she was an infant. I never told you. I didn't think I needed to. But I see now that truth has a way of showing up anyway. Love, Dad. I didn't cry. I didn't gasp or drop the letter dramatically like someone in a movie. I just sat staring at the ceiling fan, letting the hum fill the gaps between his words. Then I whispered to no one, then why did I stay? Why did I let them use me for years? I paid for Darlene's first car. I paid for half her college tuition when Dad's savings ran out. I let her sleep in my bed after her first divorce. I helped her draft the apology letter to her first fiancé. And I always assumed we were blood sisters. Even when it didn't feel mutual, I convinced myself that love didn't need to be matched to be real. But now I knew the truth. I wasn't her sister. I was her shadow. I looked at the bedside lamp. Its buzz was loud in the quiet, a mosquito of sound that made it impossible to forget I was alone. I grabbed my phone again, opened Instagram. There it was, the official wedding photo posted just 20 minutes ago. Captioned, "Couldn't have asked for a more beautiful day. Special thanks to our matron of honor, Eliona, for making the magic happen." My jaw clenched. Leona. Matron of honor. She wasn't even blood. She wasn't a sister. She wasn't there for Darlene in 2009 when she spiraled after the DUI. She wasn't there when Darlene almost lost her job at the design firm for plagiarizing a client's Pinterest board. I was. And now Leona wore the crown. I was listed nowhere, not even in the background. I thought back to the hours I spent scrolling Etsy, hunting down affordable floral backdrops. I remembered the time I drove to Charlotte in the rain to pick up the personalized signage after the courier failed. And now I wasn't even a footnote. I sat back, let the phone rest on my stomach. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclamation. My name, my time, my money, my silence. All of it had been handed out freely like confetti. No more. I opened my email, typed 3 short messages, each one colder than the last. I didn't reread them. I didn't need to. Then I opened the wedding brunch invoice again. Still unpaid. I stared at it. Didn't blink. Didn't smile. Just felt the clarity wash over me like a tide coming in slow. I wasn't going to scream. I didn't need to. They'd feel it when the music stopped. I didn't sleep. Not really. I must have dozed off sometime past midnight. Still dressed. Still buzzing from everything I refused to say. But by 5:30 a.m., my eyes opened to the thin silver blue of morning light slicing through the blackout curtains. The wedding was over. But the story was just beginning to turn. The silence in my hotel room wasn't hollow anymore. It had edges, purpose. I sat up, reached for my phone on the nightstand, and checked the brunch invoice again. Pending confirmation, still blinked. No response from the messages I'd sent the night before. Not even a half-hearted attempt at damage control. I took a long breath and stood. Walked barefoot to the little coffee machine by the window, popped in a pod, let it brew while I scrolled through my contact list. Florist first, then the band, then the bar team. Each call lasted less than a minute. "Hi, this is Shanda Carter. Due to a change in plans, we're canceling today's brunch service." "Yes, I understand the policy. Please send confirmation to the email on file." "Thank you." No emotion, no explanation, just logistics. The final call ended with a simple noted, and I turned my phone off, not silent in surrender, silent in power. By the time the coffee cooled enough to sip, I had already checked out online, packed my bag, folded my dress into its garment bag without a second glance. I didn't need to look back at it again. That dress was a chapter that didn't deserve a reread. I left the hotel by 7 a.m., drove the hour back to my town just outside Charleston, and pulled into my driveway. The front hedges needed trimming. A package sat on the porch. My house looked like it always did, quiet, normal, mine. Inside, the stillness greeted me like a friend. I dropped my keys in the bowl, kicked off my shoes, and stepped into the kitchen. It smelled faintly of lemon from the diffuser I'd set days ago. By noon, I sat at the dining table, sunlight streaking across the hardwood floor, and opened my Facebook. I didn't type anything, didn't post a caption or a quote or a dig disguised as wisdom. I uploaded a single image. A scanned copy of the check I wrote, $42,000, signed clearly in black ink. The memo line said, wedding deposits, and I hit post. That was it. By 12:47 p.m., there were already 18 comments. Wait, I thought Leona paid for everything. Hold on. Why would she cover that much? Shanda, was she even there? By 1:15 p.m., my cousin Tanya texted. Tanya, this is blowing up. People are talking. I didn't reply. I opened my fridge, pulled out a bundle of asparagus, a lemon, and a small piece of salmon, set a pot of water to boil, turned on Coltrane. The jazz played low while I moved through the kitchen like it was mine again. Because it always had been. I sliced, sautéed, stirred, lit a small candle just because I wanted to. And when I finally sat down to eat, it was the first meal in months I'd cooked for me. No planning around someone else's tastes. No plating for Instagram. Just comfort, heat, salt, and honesty. I looked at the blank wall in the hallway. It used to hold a gallery of family photos. Darlene's wedding invites, my dad's army picture, our beach trip when I turned 30. All gone now, taken down the night before the wedding. It didn't feel empty. It felt earned. Peace earned through truth. By 7 p.m., I had washed every dish, wiped down the counters, and folded the dish towel over the sink edge. Then, just as I reached to turn off the light, the doorbell rang. I froze. One long chime. I didn't move. Let it ring again and again. I could see the shadow behind the frosted glass. Someone shifting, uncertain, waiting. I stepped back, leaned against the counter, and let the silence expand. Let them sit in their discomfort the way I sat in mine. The doorbell rang one last time. I didn't answer. I didn't move. Not when the doorbell rang a third time. Not when the knocking followed, short and sharp, like a warning tap before a storm. I stayed right where I was, one hand on the countertop, the other curled into the fabric of my sweater. But I knew that knock, not in the sound, but in the rhythm. It was Darlene. I walked to the front door and pulled it open before she could hit the bell again. There she stood, dressed like the wedding hadn't ended, hair perfect, lips tight, heels too high for Sunday. Royce was 2 steps behind her, expression unreadable, and to her right, Leona, cool as ever, draped in cream silk and a stare that could burn holes through granite. None of them said hi. Darlene stepped forward first, voice tight. Why would you do that? Post the check like that? You embarrassed everyone. I leaned against the doorframe, arms crossed. Did I? You made us look like users, she said, eyes flashing. Like we just took everything and shoved you aside. Leona scoffed from behind. You humiliated your own family, Shanda. For what? Attention? I let the silence ride out for a moment. Then I looked Darlene straight in the eye and said evenly, I'm not your family. You made that clear yesterday. That hit. Darlene blinked. Her mouth opened, but no words came. I stepped aside from the door, not to let them in, but to walk over to the hallway shelf. I reached into the drawer and pulled out the red folder I'd brought back with me from the hotel. It was already creased from being handled so many times the night before. I opened it, pulled out the letter, and held it toward her. She hesitated, took it. Her hands trembled as she read. She read it once, then again, slower. Her mouth twitched when she reached the last line. Our father's words written in blue ink years ago. Darlene isn't biologically yours. Her mother left her with me. I never told you. Royce looked from her to me. You knew? I knew before I paid for your lies, I said. But I needed one of you to say it out loud. Leona said nothing. She just watched me, chin high, breath shallow. Darlene's voice cracked. I didn't know how to tell you. You didn't want to, I replied. Not bitter, just done. You wanted what I could give, not who I was. Her shoulders dropped. I saw it. The weight, the collapse, the realization that I hadn't come to beg for an apology. I had come to deliver the truth. Royce looked ready to play mediator. You're still her sister in every way that counts. I shook my head. Then she should have treated me like one. I turned toward the door, opened it wide this time. I was the kitchen help, remember? Consider this the end of my shift. No one moved. Finally, Darlene stepped back. Royce followed, hand on her elbow. Leona paused, gave me one last look, half pity, half loathing, then turned and walked down the steps. I didn't slam the door. I closed it with the kind of quiet that echoes louder than rage. I locked it, turned the deadbolt, and pressed my forehead against the wood for a second. Just a second. Then I turned around and took the deepest breath I'd taken in days. It filled me. It didn't shake. It steadied. I walked to the kitchen, poured a glass of water, and sat down at the table. My phone buzzed beside me. Tanya, you okay? I stared at the screen. Then I typed back, I'm more than okay. I'm clean. I opened my photo drive, selected the wedding album, every file, every subfolder. Deleted, gone. No backups, no second thoughts. I looked around my space. Mine again. Then I opened a new folder. Labeled it What I Keep. The new folder sat open on my screen. What I keep. I didn't fill it. Not yet. I wasn't in a rush to curate the remnants of who I had been to people who had never paused long enough to ask. I just left it there, empty, quiet, honest. The phone buzzed again, once, then twice. I ignored it until I'd finished rinsing the last mug from my tea, set it upside down on the drying mat. Only then did I dry my hands, and walk back to the table. 15 missed calls, 4 voicemails, 3 from Darlene, 1 from Leona. The last text came in just before midnight. Darlene, we need to fix this. Call me. Right below it. Leona, you should be ashamed. Family doesn't humiliate family. I let the screen dim for a beat before I swiped up. Blocked. Blocked. No reply, no explanation, no space left in my life for people who expected applause from the one they shoved backstage. I set the phone face down. That's when I remembered the box. I hadn't opened it in years. Maybe since Dad passed. I pulled the step stool into the closet and reached for the top shelf. The cardboard was soft at the corners. The tape yellowed from time written in black marker. Family. I carried it to the living room and sat cross-legged on the carpet. The first thing I pulled out was a birthday card Darlene had drawn when she was 8. Crayon hearts and crooked lettering, to the best big sister. I smiled, but it didn't reach my eyes. Not because it wasn't real, but because it didn't matter anymore. That girl, that version of her hadn't shown up in a long time. Next came the Polaroids, snowball fights, Halloween costumes, a blurry Thanksgiving dinner where everyone laughed except me. I sorted slowly. Donate, trash, keep. Only one photo made it to the final pile. Me alone on a swing set, maybe 6 or 7. Mid-laugh, legs kicked out toward the sky. I got up, walked it to the kitchen, and slid a magnet over the corner right above the stove. I stared at it for a long time. That girl hadn't needed anyone to clap. She was laughing anyway. I lit a small candle on the table and pulled out a blank sheet of paper. Not a journal, not a post, just something for me. I wrote, I gave, I built, I supported, and I was never seen. Now I see me, I choose me. I folded it in half, placed it under the candle like a quiet altar. The silence wrapped around me. Not cold this time, not isolating, just full, complete, peaceful. I sat there for a while, the soft flicker dancing against the walls. The shadows weren't ghosts. They were mine, and they moved when I moved. The phone buzzed once more. Tanya again. You good? I smiled softly, typed back. I'm more than okay. I'm clean. Then I leaned back, looked around the space that was fully mine now. The absence didn't ache. It breathed. I whispered to no one. No more applause for people who never clapped for me. The candle flame dipped low, then straightened. Outside, the darkness cracked. The first soft light of Monday morning crept across the window ledge like a quiet promise. Time to set my own table. A week passed. The house had been quieter than ever, but it wasn't lonely. It had space now. Room to think, room to breathe, and most importantly, room to choose. The morning light moved differently across the kitchen floor these days. Maybe because I stopped rearranging myself to match someone else's idea of family. Maybe because I wasn't shrinking anymore. No calls from Darlene since that last text. No updates from Royce except a single message 2 days ago. I hope someday you understand. Understand what? That silence is more acceptable than confrontation. That funding a lie makes it prettier. I never answered. I didn't need to. Instead, I replanted basil in the kitchen window. I fixed the hinge on the laundry door. I played Miles Davis records without wondering if someone would ask me to change the vibe. The life was mine now. Clean, still, unapologetic. On Friday night, I invited a few people over. Nothing fancy, just lasagna, garlic bread, salad, and a bottle of red I'd been saving for too long. The guests, a retired nurse from down the block who always waved when I walked past. A newly divorced friend I hadn't seen in years. A couple who ran the bakery around the corner. My neighbor Jacob, who offered to help carry groceries once and never overstepped, and Tanya. Yes, Tanya. She showed up with a bottle of white and a nervous smile. Hope I'm not overstepping, she said, stepping into the foyer like it held landmines. I just opened my arms and said, welcome to my real life. We sat outside under string lights I'd installed myself, the kind that didn't try too hard to be impressive. Just warm, just enough. We ate, we talked, laughed. Nobody asked for speeches. No one hovered with fake compliments. Nobody told me I was too sensitive or reading into things. When the wine glasses clinked, Jacob raised his and said, to people who show up, even when they weren't asked to. Everyone smiled, and I raised mine, too. Not to complete the circle, but to anchor myself in it. This was what a table felt like when you weren't sitting at the edge waiting to be acknowledged. This was choosing your seat instead of begging for one. Later that night, after everyone left, I stood by the sink rinsing plates. Not one dish had been broken. Not one word felt off. It was the first time in years I ended a dinner without checking if someone was quietly disappointed in me. I walked into the office, reached for the red folder I'd kept tucked away on the shelf, the one that held truths I never asked for. I opened it, looked at the stack. There were letters from Dad. Some I had read before, some I hadn't. I pulled out one, the one he wrote before he passed. His handwriting still shaky but clear. You don't need blood to be real. You just need love that shows up. I read it twice, then slid it into a new folder labeled New Start. The rest I shredded one by one, not because they didn't matter once, but because they no longer controlled the narrative. I sat at my desk for a moment, then picked up a pen and wrote a note to myself on clean paper. I stayed. I survived. I began again. I folded it, slipped it into the folder. I didn't need their stories anymore. I was writing mine. Outside, the night air was warm. The porch called to me, so I stepped out with a mug of chamomile in hand and wrapped my robe tighter. There was no noise, no chaos, no spotlight I hadn't asked for, just the wind, the faint sound of crickets, and the hum of a life not curated for anyone else. I sipped my tea, looked out into the street, and smiled. Not the smile I gave when I was hiding pain, but the kind that came when you stopped pretending you didn't matter. I used to wait for a seat at their table. Now I'd built my own. They say family is where you're supposed to feel safest. But sometimes the deepest cuts come from the people you once trusted with everything. Looking back now, I don't regret the silence I kept. I regret how long I kept it. I thought love meant sacrificing without being seen. I thought being the strong one meant enduring disrespect with a smile. But here's what I know now. Silence is not strength if it costs you your dignity. Forgiveness doesn't mean staying where you're not valued. And family, real family, is built on truth, not blood or convenience.